The way that we typically actually sell, I would say, in the LBE market is that we actually partner with people and try to solution with them directly, right? So we don't just sell, we really try to understand exactly what the problem is and what the solution then needs to be.
Back at the VIVE Theater, Bob Cooney, courtesy of HTC at IAAPA 23, and I am here with Felix Choi. Felix Choi. I'm not going to do another take. I love the bloopers. My whole thing is a blooper. From Vicon. And Vicon has been in the motion capture business for a long time.
Yeah, almost 40 years now.
Almost 40 years. And a lot of the companies that bring like these really high impact, highly immersive VR experiences, like Dreamscape, for example, Sandbox VR, use Vicon motion capture cameras for tracking, and they use these, tracking balls and tracking sensors, or active. Then you deliver the active one. We're not going to talk about any of that shit because that's all now. You're making all that obsolete, not really, but for our industry, and you're getting rid of all of those wearables. And you're moving into the future of markerless motion capture, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So what is markerless motion capture?
Yeah, so let's rewind a little bit just to talk briefly about our current solution, right? So what we do currently is we have optical hardware and software to support that. And what it is we capture discrete points or sets of points, and from that we can get an avatar. Obviously, that adds a lot of friction into the process. So what we're doing is we're removing, the idea of having these markers on a subject and being able to capture that markerlessly.
And most people, you've seen this. I don't know if like for Avatar, where they put the actors in bodysuits, or I remember we did Tiger Woods PGA Tour golf, and Tiger Woods would get in his black suit and they put what looked like golf balls all over him, and you put them in a studio and you capture them that way. And that's historically been the technology, right? And what do those balls do that you're getting rid of? How did they work, so we all have a better understanding of how the future is going to be?
Absolutely. So the cameras are IR optical cameras, so they'll shine infrared light, and that will bounce off of a reflective object. We'll give you a discrete point on a 2D sensor, and then if you have multiple 2D sensor images, you'll be able to triangulate that into a 3D position in real space in real time.
Okay, and then the active tracking, the ones where you wear the pulsars or whatever you call them, they're actually emitting infrared signals, right, that the cameras pick up?
That's correct, yeah. So we kind of flip the solution on its head there a little bit, and instead of the IR light being actually on the camera, the IR light is emitting from the clusters themselves.
And what's the advantage of that over the tracking balls? What do you call those things? I keep feeling like there should be a word for that.
Optoreflective balls.
I'll just call them tracker balls.
Yeah, ping pong balls works too.
Yeah. What's the advantage of the active tracking over that kind of ping pong ball passive tracking?
Yeah, the main advantage really is the ability to have two-way communication, right? So then you can start assigning patterns, you can communicate with those clusters, so you can actually assign that from the software themselves. So you don't have to, have a person stand in a pose, do a ROM or anything like that. You'll be able to say right away, this object is on this space, and you'll be able to control that remotely through an API or something like that.
And so if you had a bunch of people in a room and one of them got occluded for a minute, the system could actually lose track of them theoretically, right? And with the active, that doesn't happen because it always knows who's who in a space, right?
Theoretically, yes, that could be possible, yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. And so now, and the challenges with that is just wearables and friction, little balls break off, your battery life, you have to recharge the active trackers, you have to have employees to have, help patrons put the things on and take them off and store them and recharge them. And so there's a bunch of operational friction around that a lot of companies were willing to put up with, I'll call it, to be able to create that like really immersive full body experience. And so now the next level, you're getting rid of all of that friction. What is it, and how do you do it?
Yeah, so I mean the impetus or the motivation for doing that is, as you said, it's to remove that friction, it's not so much just like the operators and having the setup time, but also it always kind of anchors people actually back to reality a little bit because they'll know that they're wearing something, right? That actually helps facilitate this experience. So the way that it's going to work is, ideally, that you would actually not have to put anything on, right? You would just kind of walk into a space, and based on the cameras and machine learning and all this other technical stuff that's way above me, will do its magic, and it'll be able to pick points on your body and then be able to create your avatar from that. And so
it how does it know? So one of the things with Active, you said, is it's able to identify that person no matter what, or that tracker, no matter what they do, where they go. How does it pick out my body and track me through space and know that I'm me and I'm not you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the challenges that we're still trying to solve right now. And the kind of showcase that we demoed at SIGGRAPH earlier this year, we kind of simplified that solution by making it actually a hybrid solution by using our pulsars on one of the HTC headsets. So we could not only mirror up or marry up the two coordinate systems, but also help to identify the subjects very quickly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because you got to put a headset on anyway. What difference does it make if you just put an active tracker on it? So yeah, cool. Okay, and what else can you do with it? So there's lots of talk about tracking cameras and facial recognition and stuff like that. Like beyond just tracking a bunch of people accurately in space. And I do want to circle back to avatars and inverse kinematics because Andy blew my mind when he mentioned that to me the first time. Or it was actually Aaron Grosky from Dreamscape said, no, let's talk about, all right, so what are inverse kinematics? Let's start there.
We're really diving deep into it.
We are.
Well, I guess I'm not sure really what level to kind of get to, but essentially, you should be able to, from tracking different segments, be able to actually build up a skeleton. So in the case of, let's say, having a few trackers, let's say on your hands and bodies, there's only certain ways that those segments can actually get into those positions, knowing the kind of the anatomy of the body.
Right. So if I hold my arm like this, it's not bent the other way around, right?
Exactly.
As an example?
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. So there's only certain ways that the body can move, and based off of where we're placing trackers, at least in the physical sense right now, would help inform exactly where the rest of the body is.
Now, but we've all had, we shouldn't assume that, I've had a lot of experiences where that goes horribly wrong, right? And next thing you know, my legs bent over, my avatar legs bent back like that, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? And you don't do that. Like a developer has to take the data from those trackers and create an avatar that interprets that accurately to create animations that don't break immersion and look goofy. How much of a challenge is that? And I don't know if you know this answer. I'm looking at Martin because he knows the answer. But how much of a challenge is that for developers that now that you can track the whole body, that's no longer going to be a problem, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's kind of I guess another element of kind of understanding your audience and knowing what type of movements you actually expect from them, because the actual avatars themselves, you could change kind of the degrees of freedom for each of the joints, which would then change kind of the solution, right? So you could have it as, I don't know how many segments you might track. Let's say 11. You could treat each of them as 11 discrete objects that are just kind of floating in space, and then you're going to kind of stitch them together, and in which case then you might get some of this popping that you might, that you're kind of referring to. Or you can actually create it as a chain and say, okay, well, we know that these segments, like the knee is a knee joint, typically 1 degree of freedom. So it's just kind of like knowing your audience and knowing how much constraint to actually put into each of the avatars.
I suspect there's more to it than that, because you made it sound really simple, and I've done plenty of experiences where they didn't actually do that. So I'm suspecting from a development standpoint, there's either some difficulty or naivete or something that's stopping people to do it, because it happens all the time in the experiences that I do. And I know like Zero Latency, when they first did it, they anchored both hands to the gun because they knew you're playing a game where you're always holding a rifle. And so they just basically anchored your hands in this avatar to the gun all the time. And even if I took my hand out here, it still looked like it was there because they didn't want to have to deal with that. So there's lots of shortcuts that they're taking to deal with that. And so that's no longer going to be a problem now. What you're going to deliver them, how much information that they can then, like how much information in the body are you giving them?
I think that would be the hope, that yes, that would no longer be a problem. And really, actually, yeah, it would be full body, so you would get, pretty much every segment.
So if I were Tiger Woods and I went into a capture studio, how many balls would you put on me?
Right now?
Like, no, in the old days.
Oh,
How many balls would I wear in a good motion capture suite?
50, 55, 56.
And so that's 56 tracking points, right? And then, so in a VR experience, you might get 4 or 5 or 6. What does the Markerless give you? Where in that spectrum is it?
The whole idea for the Markerless would be 0, actually.
So 0 tracking
yeah,
points.
Exactly.
But that's better than 56.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. All right, you guys can figure out that math. So it's really just a different paradigm of tracking, is what I'm interpreting from what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, different technology, actually even different hardware altogether, and that's one of the solutions that we need to kind of figure out is our shift. You know, we obviously have a great history in motion tracking and all that experience, but now we're shifting away from the optical motion capture into more of the video-based.
So is this more like machine vision cameras and things like that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So when I ask which of the camera set you're going to use for Markerless and I don't get an answer, that's because you're still trying to figure that out.
That's correct, yeah.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Yeah. That's the challenge with inventing new shit, right? Yeah, cool. And so how do you see this affecting, and if you can't answer that, that's cool. How do you see this affecting the cost? Obviously there's an OpEx savings for operators not having wearables, and there'll be a CapEx, I'm assuming, savings on the wearables. But, you know, is the inherent camera technology more expensive to be able to do this than infrared, just at its core level? Is it inherently more expensive or less expensive? Or do you know?
It's probably tough to say without knowing what the exact solution was going to look like, but I would say specifically for this LBE market, I think we would have to find a solution that would be cheaper than what we're currently offering.
Yeah, cool, awesome, awesome. And in a space, so right now, I know I just did the new Sandbox Squid Games game a couple of weeks ago. I've got a video dropping on that very soon. And I think they said they had like 16 or 18 cameras in each stage. Do you see the number of cameras changing? Because that's obviously for occlusion issues and stuff like that. Do you see the number of cameras changing, or do you think it might go up or down or stay the same? Or
yeah, that's probably a tough question to answer. What I will say though is that whether it's video-based or optical, it's still a line of sight problem.
Yeah.
So you still need to be able to see the same. Maybe you need to see slightly less targets, or you can kind of interpolate what the body's doing based off of a certain number of targets.
Yeah,
but
wow.
ultimately, yeah, it's still a line of sight issue.
How much has AI, it's a big buzzword, right? And how much has AI enabled this? And I know AI is just an algorithm to a certain extent, and I'm not talking about large language models and the black box stuff, but is there how do you talk about that? And is it a part of this, or is this just like computer science and the same shit we've been doing for 50 years? And if so, why has it emerged all of a sudden?
Well, I think the main thing is really just the emergence of technology. I mean, since I think post-COVID, I think there's been definitely a push more towards a pretty big shift in technology and an increase in what's capable. So I think that's probably where it's more coming from, is the computing power has actually increased so much so that we can get to a space or a place where we can start talking about these solutions, because it's no good if we can just record the video. We have to actually be able to record the video in real time, process it with low latency, and the reliability and the accuracy that people are expecting from a Vicon system, but B, also a LBE solution. Yeah,
and you mentioned latency, and I didn't ask about that. Like, what's your target latency for this system compared to what it was with infrared?
Right now, we don't really have a hard number for that, but our goal would be to kind of replicate, to be as good or better. That's typically where we try to be when we're developing something new.
And so from a time horizon, when do you think you gave the demo at SIGGRAPH, and everybody's like, all right, it works, ship it to me, right? And we all know that trade show demos aren't actually always 100% real. But that was a pretty high volume experience. From what I could tell, it kind of ran pretty flawlessly. How close are you to launching this thing?
So I'll kind of give a little bit of a roundabout answer. So first I'll go back in time. The way that we typically actually sell, I would say, in the LBE market is that we actually partner with people and try to solution with them directly, right? So we don't just sell a kit and say, hey, you've got a 10 by 12 space, this is exactly what you need. We really try to understand exactly what the problem is and what the solution then needs to be. So what we're looking for really at this time is actually more of those kind of partners that can help tell us, okay, well, this is exactly what I'm looking for and what I'm expecting from a solution, and then we can kind of work together and figure out exactly what that timeline is. So in terms of the actual technology, maybe we're pretty close. But in terms of it actually being a product that can go into an installation space, I don't know that I have a timeline for that. But hopefully, through these, the conferences being here, will give us, open those doors, those opportunities to speak with partners and say, okay, now we have a common understanding of what exactly is the expectation.
Yeah, and I guess your go-to-market is through partners. So if partners come to you, and I know you have a pilot program or a pioneer program we should talk about, if partners come to you today and they say, hey, we want to start testing and developing this, like, what do you tell them?
Yeah, we say, well, first off, we kind of want to get an understanding of, we kind of put them through a generic, questionnaire of just like, what are your interests? But also, how do you envision, like, how does this actually help you?
Assuming they're qualified and they pass your qualification test, is it something that people can, they could develop on, like, now, or do they have to wait 3 or 4, 6 months to get a development kit? I'm just curious, because then they're going to have to develop it and implement it and productize it and sell it, and so I'm trying to figure out what's the first part of that journey going to look like for the tech.
I think we're probably still too early to say exactly. Definitely not 6 months, but if we said, like in a year, that sounds reasonable. But yeah, I'm definitely not going to commit to that. So I know that there are some
Andy's like, no. Yeah. All right, cool. So sometime in 2024, this is going to make its way in the hands of developers, and then developers are going to figure out how to implement it, and then and then it's up to them to figure out how quickly they can bring it to market.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Now I think you've talked about a pioneer program or a pilot program or something. Tell me a little bit about that, and how do people find out more?
Sure. So if you just go to our website, www.vicon.com, you can find out more about our pioneer program. Really, it could be for anyone that's interested in Markerless. It's really to just help us understand that journey for you guys as the actual implementers of the technology, to figure out what is that journey for you guys, and how does that actually look for you moving forward.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for continuing to push the envelope on not only the technology, but helping the consumer experiences get better, the operators saving money. Like, it's all of these are all the building blocks of helping location-based virtual reality continue to grow. And yeah, I'm so happy to see it happen. Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Felix.